Albio. Nice to see you. Good show, of course. So listen, I tell you I went box. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I think we're actually getting close. Yeah. I think it's very well done. I invite you to come to our chamber. I'll get it over. Somebody knows that. Can't stay over here? Should happen. So it did. Hi, Jerry. How are you? He's a good listener. He is. He's a good listener. You know, we're in the shade. Sunglasses on. You get to I've been really worried. We gotta go to DC, baby. Jerry, you ready? Yeah, we're done. Ready.
You're going to be the only speaker unless you introduce the congressman.
I'll introduce him.
If everybody could try to find a seat, we'll start right up. All right, good morning, folks. Welcome to Hudson County, Laurel Hill County Park. Now, the locals call this Snake Hill, but I wouldn't worry about that, not this early in the morning here. We're here today, to talk about investment. I'm going to be in this park twice this week. If you drove by a brand spanking new high school on your way back here, that is the Frank Gargiulo High-Tech High School, which will be opening its curtains up on Thursday for the first time. And it is directly linked to what we'll be talking about with the investment in the infrastructure with the governor. But I think it's important for all of us in elected office to make sure that we think not only about the present but about the future. And investments in our infrastructure could be investments in our kids, like the new school, or for bridges and tunnels that we'll be hearing about today. We got quite a crowd here today in support of a project that probably we should be celebrating a ribbon cutting on an open tunnel, but instead we'll be celebrating a new beginning. We can't miss this one. We missed the last one. With us tonight, this morning, is our senator from Hudson County, my friend, Bob Menendez. We have three congressmen, my congressman and my old basketball buddy, Albio Cires. From Essex and Hudson, Congressman Donald Payne. And Congressman Bill Pasquarel. Whenever they give you the job of introducing people, you're always going to miss some, so I'm definitely going to do that. Please tap me on the shoulder a little after this, and we'll make up for any mistakes. From my freeholder board in North Bergen, freeholder chairman Anthony Vanieri.
Yeah.
Our host mayor here, Mayor Mike Ganelli of Secaucus. Commissioner on the Department of Transportation, Diane Gutierrez Scarcetti. The President of the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce, Tom Bracken. We have the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Chamber of Commerce, and that would be Michael Egenton. Hudson County, from Hudson County Labor Board, Patty Kelleher. A lot of union guys here. We'll get to them later. The Operating Engineers Vice President, Greg Lavallee. Rick Sabato from the Carpenters Local. Quick look around, that's all I see according to my paper. So I'm going to introduce you now to a guy who has been no stranger to Hudson County. He's been up here quite a bit since elected, but I can't think of a more important project to talk about than the one that he's going to talk about today. If I could, just for a second, Gov, say that we've taken frequent trips down the river with Bill Sheehan, the river keeper here, to look at some of the progress being made along the coastline. And it is frightening when the boat goes under the bridges and you see concrete peeling off the metal that's there, and you think to yourself, I'm on this bridge probably 2, 3, 4 times a week, and it looks so treacherous from the bottom up there. Something needs to be done. We think we all understand that, and we're going to talk about a plan as to how to get it done. My pleasure to introduce to you my friend, our Governor, Phil Murphy.
Thanks, Tom. Well done, buddy. Thank you. Let's hear it for the county executive, one of the rockinest guys in the state, Tom DeGise. Tom, thank you very much for that. I hope everybody had a good Labor Day and took some time to reflect upon all that organized labor has done to promote fairness and justice for the American worker, to grow the middle class, and to further our values as a nation. Tom mentioned some of the folks, Patty Kelleher, Greg Lavallee, Rick Sabato, Barry Kushner standing to my right. We are surrounded by brothers and sisters from organized labor today, and it means a lot that they are with us this morning. Again, good morning, everybody. I'm honored again to be here with this august group, Senator Bob Menendez, Congressman Bill Pascrell, Congressman Albio Osiris, Congressman Donald Payne Jr. Also here today, and thrilled to have them, Gateway Development Corporation trustees Tony Kosha and Jerry Zero. We'll hear from Jerry later. Interim Executive Director John Porcari, Finance Director Frank Saker, and also a particular treat that the guy who runs the Port Authority is with us this morning, Rick Cotton. Rick, thank you for being here and for all that you do. And as Tom gave you some of the names, we have a wall of presence here today from county, local, business, community, labor leaders. If I started naming everybody, we'd have to push dinner back. I appreciate Tom having done so. And again, thank you all for being here. Today, we are all here to speak with one clear voice. New Jersey is ready to get work on America's next great infrastructure project. And I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I know New York is as well. We are ready for the Trump administration to step up to the plate with us. We are ready to do Gateway together. The Gateway project is not just a New Jersey, New York thing. There is perhaps no project in which the economic future of our entire country and our national security are so inextricably intertwined. This is not about politics. It's not about party. It's always been about doing what's right for our region and our country. Our entire congressional delegation has been invaluable. In addition to those with us today who have been extraordinary, I also have to acknowledge the efforts of retiring Congressman Rodney Frelinghuysen, who's been a champion for Gateway and a leader in the fight for funding. And as Rodney enters his final federal appropriations cycle as chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, I look forward to working with him to secure the vital federal investments we need to get Gateway done. But before we can get to a new Gateway tunnel, we need to make sure that trains can quite literally get to a new Gateway tunnel. That means finally replacing the span behind us, the Portal North Bridge. We are ready to move forward on replacing it. We are ready to create the thousands of good jobs that will come with this project. The plan is fully designed and permitted. It is shovel ready. We have committed our share of funding, $600 million from the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, whose CEO, Tim Sullivan, is with us today. We were asked by the federal government to put more skin in the game, and we did, and then some. This is more than double the amount the previous administration had proposed. We have found cost savings. We have addressed the feedback and recommendations of the U.S. Department of Transportation. We are ready to put our capital to work to create a modern, reliable, and safe span that will carry our economy and our people forward for the next 100 years. We have no more time to waste. The Portal Bridge opened in 1910. It has more than outlived its life expectancy. Its issues are a regular issue for thousands upon thousands of New Jersey Transit and Amtrak riders. More than 200,000 rail riders cross this span every day. When this bridge gets stuck, as it all too often does, thousands of commuters get stuck, and commerce along the entire Northeast corridor gets stuck with them. This is certainly about New Jersey and New York, but it's about so much more than that. This little bridge and this gateway project impact about 20% of our nation's GDP. So far this year alone, more than 140 trains have been canceled and nearly 100,000 passengers have been inconvenienced because of these ongoing issues. Every day replacement of this span is delayed, costs an estimated $150,000. But more importantly, every day of delay also costs our commuters and our economy untold amounts in dollars and cents and sanity. Commuters have pushed for this. Freeholders, county executives, and mayors up and down the rail line have pushed for this. Business and labor leaders have spoken about the importance of Gateway to our economy and its potential to create and support good jobs. All of us here today have stepped up to the plate. Now we just need the federal government to join us, at least in the dugout, and we will surely welcome them with open arms. It is now my pleasure, and I don't know where we as a state or as a country would be without him, to recognize and invite up for a few words our senior senator, a tireless fighter, again for New Jersey, for the region, for our nation, and certainly the Gateway Project, the one, the only, my good friend, Senator Bob Menendez.
Well, thank you, Governor, very much. Thank you for your leadership as we continue to move a project of national significance together. I am thrilled to be joined by my colleagues in the House of Representatives who have been such passionate advocates, among others, certainly Congressman Series on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, incredibly important to this project and our overall infrastructure development efforts. We're thrilled to have all of the leaders of organized labor here who understand the possibilities, the enormous possibilities for working men and women that could be unlocked if we got a generational project finally moving and done, as well as the business community that understands the enormous economic impact. And while he's not with us today because he is at the Senate Judiciary Committee, and I've already seen some of the early morning interchange that Senator Booker has had as he is in the midst of the Kavanaugh hearings. He has been an extraordinary advocate alongside with me for this project. Throughout my time in public service, infrastructure has been one of my highest priorities. Whether it was working to build the Hudson-Bergen Light Rail when I was a mayor and state senator, to fighting for $100 million successfully for the Liberty Corridor when I served in the House, to securing record federal funding for New Jersey as the ranking member of the Senate's Transit Subcommittee, we've always worked to deliver for New Jersey's communities. And that's because the question of whether we invest in our infrastructure isn't abstract. It translates into real benefits and real consequences for the people of New Jersey. It's the question of whether you can get to work on time or whether you even have access to a given job opportunity. It dictates whether businesses can bring their goods to market and whether they choose to locate in New Jersey at all. It's about where we build our infrastructure and who has access to it. Infrastructure shapes where we live and how we get around.
it has an enormous impact on our environment and our economy. And as I've seen time and time again throughout my career, making smart investments in New Jersey's infrastructure yields real benefits, spurring vibrant communities, enhancing job opportunities, and improving the quality of life. And that's why we're here today to talk about the Gateway Project, because of the real-world opportunity the project presents and the real-life consequences of failure to act. The Northeast Corridor is one of the key transportation arteries for a region that, as the governor says, generates 20% of the nation's entire gross domestic product, nearly $4 trillion. A shutdown of the corridor, which may very well be a reality without Gateway, would cost $100 million per day. It would be disaster for our workers, for our economy, and our air quality. Because of its importance, stakeholders on both sides of the aisle and both sides of the Hudson, in the business community and the labor unions that are here, have come together to voice support for the project. But unfortunately, President Trump has missed the message. Like we've seen time and time again, reality is taking a back seat to the president's political vendettas. He's ignoring the national economic benefits this project will generate. He's ignoring the workers who would see good family wage jobs building the tunnels and replacing the Portal Bridge. And he's ignoring the promises he made to the American people about investing in our infrastructure. It's become painfully clear that something is wrong with the administration when we see how we are being treated in terms of handling Gateway. First, we got a poor rating to the Hudson Tunnels project, which originally had a great rating, stalling the project from moving forward in the New Starts process despite its clear merits. And then we saw the administration do something similar with the Portal Bridge, which is even more egregious. Initially, the Trump administration had given the Portal Bridge the second highest possible ranking of all rankings. But after they decided to hinder the project, they reversed course and gave the Portal Bridge the second lowest possible ranking, from the second highest to the second lowest. Same project, same set of circumstances. Then the administration went so far as to threaten to veto the government funding bill and risk shutting down the entire federal government if there was $1 in the bill for Gateway. At the end of the day, we didn't get $1 for Gateway. We got $541 million for Gateway. We did it by working in a bipartisan manner and by refusing to allow the president to bully us into backing down. So there's more to do. The investment will keep the project moving forward in the face of President Trump's opposition. But time and time again, we have fought back against the president's efforts to kill this project. Whether he proposed eliminating the New Starts program entirely, Congress responded by increasing the program's funding. When the Trump Department of Transportation blocked us from taking federal loans, Governor Murphy and the Gateway Development Corporation came up with an alternative financing plan. And when the president threatened to veto our appropriations, we stuck to our principles and passed a bill that gave Gateway $541 million. It should be clear to the president by now that the Gateway project will be built with or without his support. So it's time to stop playing games. It's time to give these projects a rating that is based on their merits. It is time to approve the environmental review that has been stalled by the DOT since March. It's time to move these projects to the New Starts program and lock in the federal funding. The writing's on the wall. This is a fight the administration cannot win, and we will not let them win, because the stakeholders here today aren't driven by petty politics. We're driven by something far, far more powerful. The desire not only to do right by our constituents, but to get a project that is a generational project up and running. 20% of GDP, $4 trillion, an opportunity for a generation to change the realities of 2-century-old tunnels, a century-old bridge, into a new opportunity for this nation. That's what we are in the midst of advocating for today, and I am convinced that's what we will succeed. With that, let me introduce my colleague, a tremendous advocate on the Ways and Means Committee, and when we're talking about how to fund things, an incredibly important ally, Congressman Bill Pascrell.
Well, we certainly aren't in the middle of Montana. We are here to carry out our responsibilities. Governor, thank you for inviting us. Bob Menendez, Albio Series, Donald Payne, always there fighting for the infrastructure that New Jersey needs. From bridges to transit, we need to do this. Now, a few years ago, we were all together. 4,000 workers stopped working when that arc was stopped. We had worked 14 years to plan that tunnel. The Regional Plan Association, business, our labor unions, our universities, and we had to support a bipartisan support for that tunnel. It not only stopped 4,000 workers and many more that would come from working, it made us look like a bunch of fools. But here we are. Murphy does not take no for an answer. He's a different kind of governor. I don't think he's on an ego trip. The Portal North Bridge and the Gateway Tunnel are important for our survival, both commercial and commuter. Bob Menendez, we went to many of those meetings together, Bob and I, down in Newark. And we thought that by now, we would be into those tunnels. If you ever gone into those tunnels over there now, Senator and Congressman Wolf from Virginia, who's since retired, showed me one day what those tunnels look like. I had a guy from Virginia show me the inners of the tunnels. They're not safe. Many of our bridges are not safe. You know what? It costs money to fix them or shut the place down and go to Montana. We have a choice. I know Congressman Series is doing everything he can on that committee, and I understand just how important maintaining our infrastructure is, especially for northern New Jerseyans. This is our lifeblood we're talking about here. Thank you to Freeholder Anthony Venieri, Mayor Mike Ganelli of Secaucus, and Mayor Albert Santos of Kearney for being here today with our other mayors. Today, your work is recognized to support this project on a local level. It is fitting that we're in Laurel Hill Park. While some will recall this park once hosted the Turnpike Dionysaurus, I thought it was just another name for the prehistoric Portal Bridge, by the way. This bridge, over a century old, is a constant source of delays, as you heard the governor point out. We need to unlock every dollar that we can. It has not always been easy. The president has put up roadblocks. Despite his roadblocks, and despite him telling American people that infrastructure is a priority, how many times did we hear that? We haven't had any infrastructure major bill over for a 5-year period, which guarantees and removes anxieties. We haven't had a bill. We are the minority, but we have not had a bill. He could have pursued an infrastructure package. He could have worked with Democrats. That's common sense. Instead, he chose a different path. First, his budget calls for cutting more than $240 billion from our infrastructure programs. So here's a guy that ran for president of the United States that promised north, south, east, and west, that he was going to put money into a sustainable infrastructure program. And what does he do? He cuts $240 billion. And that included $122 billion over 10 years to the Highway Trust Fund. Brilliant. Brilliant logic. This is money which pays for road projects and mass transit. We have the largest mass transit system in the country. It costs money. 2/3 of that money comes from the federal government. If we don't do our job, the transit collapses. Then Trump's Department of Transportation lowered the federal priority rating, as Bob Menendez pointed out so acutely. And then he reneged on the deal. Earlier this year, we fought back and won when the president tried to kill funding the House chairman and delegation designated for Gateway through the appropriations process. Everyone here today, from lawmakers to those in the business community, and our great Chamber of Commerce president is here, they know that the Gateway and Portal Bridge projects are decisive to the future of our region. It is important to the stability of our state and rail traffic up and down the eastern seaboard. Their construction, which will serve interstate commerce and mass transit, falls squarely under the responsibility of the federal government. So Americans support good roads and bridges and good tunnels. This shouldn't be partisan. No matter what roadblocks they try to put in front of us, I'm going to, and my brothers here today are going to keep fighting for the commuters and everyone who is fed up with the traffic here in North Jersey. So it's really time to get moving again. So Bob, thank you for being our leader on this issue. Governor, you've shown tremendous courage in this. I know you're struggling with a budget. Every governor struggles with a budget. I don't want to hear those excuses. We're going to do it in New Jersey because we are together on this issue. It's our lifeline. Thank you, and thank you all for coming today. Appreciate it. And I want to introduce Albert.
Yeah. I was going to say something about you.
Oh, go ahead.
Can I say something about you? I just want to say, I mentioned that Senator Menendez, I don't know where we'd be without him. This is an extraordinary congressional delegation. Congressman Pascal and I were together yesterday in his district, and nobody fights like you do. So I want to make sure that we go on record that we've got an extraordinary delegation. Many representatives are with us today. And by the way, if I'm on an ego trip, I'm flying in coach in a middle seat. I want to introduce a dear friend, one of the longest time friends in the political arena that I have in this state, another great representative and Congressman Albio Ciros.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you for having us all here today. County Executive, great to have you here. Senator, thank you again for all that you fight for us and all your hard work. My colleague, Bill Pasquale, nobody shuts him up, whether it's here or in the Congress. He's just a great fighter for all of us, and we are very proud to have him representing us. And now I have my good friend working with me on the Transportation Committee, Don Payne Jr. It is a great team that makes a great effort to bring back the money that we need here in New Jersey. I'll talk a little bit about the experience that I had when we were summoned to the White House to talk about the bridge and to talk about the Gateway. We were there with Governor Cuomo, Governor Christie, Schumer, myself, Don Norcross, and a bunch of other people. And we made our pitch to the president regarding the importance of the infrastructure work that needs to be done here on this Portal Bridge. And I have to tell you, I left there very confident that he was behind us. Little did I know that it was BSing us, because little later in that year, they put out a letter saying that these projects are no longer of national significance. And obviously we were very upset. So when Secretary Chow came before the committee, we certainly gave her a hard time. She accused my colleague and I of bullying her just because we brought out the importance and the impact that this bridge has and this gateway tunnel has. So she accused us of bullying. And the worst part of it all is that at the end she said, well, you people are rich state, you can afford it. That really, set me off at my colleague. But when you look at this bridge that is so important on the northeast corridor, and when they open it and they close it, sometimes it doesn't lock properly. They have to have a guy with a sledgehammer to line it up properly. Can you imagine a bridge that important that you have to have somebody there to line it up? It's 110 years old. So to me, it's amazing when you talk to the administration and they don't see the importance. It impacts about 55 million people, hundreds of thousands of jobs in this whole region. We will keep insisting that this administration do their part. Usually on federal projects, it's 80-20. We put in 80, they put in 80. We came to the president promoting a 50-50 project, not 80-20. And we left there thinking that we were going to have his support. I cannot for the life of me, a guy from New York that doesn't see the importance of this bridge and these tunnels and the impact that it has on the economy nationally. So I'm telling you this, as part member of the Transportation Committee, we will keep fighting for money, for these tunnels, and because this region impacts the national economy, not just this part here. And I'm fortunate to have colleagues like Don Payne. And before I end, I just want to give a thanks to an outgoing member, Frelinghuysen. He has been a strong supporter working for us on this region. And I know that the senator worked very hard on a bipartisan basis to make sure that we get our fair share. And he took a lot of heat for standing up for this region. So I just want to say thank you very much, and I thank you, Governor, for putting this together. This is just a good event.
Thanks, man. Appreciate your being here. Thank you, Albio, again, for everything you do and for being here today and those words. It is my great honor to introduce another dear friend and great public servant, Congressman Donald Payne, Jr. Congressman.
Thank you, Governor. It's a real honor and a privilege to be here with my colleagues from the federal level, great senator from the state of New Jersey, Robert Menendez, who is second to none in the Senate for fighting what is important for this nation and specifically this state. So I am honored to serve with you, sir, as we continue to do what's the best interest of New Jersey. You know, I don't know if it's hitting cleanup or the end of seniority, one of the two, but here I am. Let me just say that all has really been said that needs to be said. Rodney Frelinghuysen, let me once again thank him for the work that he did in helping us get to this point. Because you see, we found out one night after we thought all of this had been taken care of, we got word from some members of the House that members from Minnesota and North Carolina were going to block this funding. So several of us went to the floor to fight for that. Rodney Frelinghuysen, Albion Series, Bill Pasquarello, Peter King, and several others from New York. We were successful in holding on. And so what you see today is the result of a bipartisan effort, by-state effort, in understanding how important this work really is. Ladies and gentlemen, this bridge was first proposed after the Civil War. It was built in 1910. And if and when it does close and does not go back into position, transportation is halted the Northeast Corridor between Boston and Washington, D.C. by this one bridge. It is an outrage, as Congressman Series says, that we go to the White House, full delegations, our senators, members of the congressional members, our governors, and sit there in front of the president and have him tell us, oh no, this makes sense. This seems like a great project. And then 2 days later, that was on a Tuesday. On a Thursday, we hear that he's starting to scuttle the project already. It is absolutely unconscionable. And don't go in those tunnels when they're lit. Be glad you go through them and they're dark. Because if you saw them lit, you might not go back in them in the dark. These tunnels need work, but in order to do the work to repair them, you need the new tunnel to maintain traffic flowing properly between the two states. So I've been honored to join the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, along with my colleague Albio Series, to fight for what is right for this area. 20%, we've heard the numbers, 20% of this nation's goods and products is rest with this Northeast Corridor. So I'm here to be glad to be here with the governor, who I know is a fighter. We saw it during his campaign. We see it now that he's been in Trenton, and we want to continue to do what we need to do in Washington to make sure that we get our fair share here. Remember, New Jersey, we send more to Washington in taxes than we get back. So we're doing our fair share. We need to get our just due. And we'll continue to do that as a delegation, as a group, as a bi-state cooperation that we have been to this point. Thank you very much.
All right. Great job, Dan. We have one more speaker, and then we'll take a couple of questions. But before I introduce him, I mentioned Tom Bracken and the Chamber of Commerce. I mentioned brothers and sisters from organized labor from all stripes here today. Obviously, the building trades in Hudson County are of particular relevance, so Patty, thank you in particular. But the Chamber, this is not abstract, and Jim Kirkos is here, who runs the Meadowlands Chamber. The impact on if a glass half full, if we get this financed and fixed, if the federal government comes in and is a real partner, we get the gateway tunnels funded from the federal government and built. The positive economic impact is anything but abstract. It is absolutely crystal clear, the impact that it will have on our economy here in New Jersey. There are three distinguished trustees of the Gateway Development Corporation. Our friend Steve Cohen from the New York side is an outstanding public servant, formerly the vice chair of the Port Authority. Tony Kosha, who's with us today, who's the chairman of Amtrak and the former chair of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. And one of my closest friends, a guy who's been an extraordinary public servant to both sides of the aisle, the ultimate example of somebody who calls balls and strikes and tries to do the right thing for New Jersey and the region. Speaking on behalf of the trustees today, my dear friend Jerry Zero.
Well, thank you, Governor Murphy, for that generous introduction. I think it's clear to everybody here who may have doubted the viability of the Gateway Tunnel project. Today will serve as a clear, unmistakable, and irrevocable signal that this tunnel will be built, and we have no choice. Our present antiquated tunnel, which you've heard is 110 years old, was built during the administration of President Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt. Or, for further context, it was built at the time the Titanic was under construction, and we pray the tunnel doesn't suffer a similar fate. Fully 13% of the New York City labor pool is forced to play transit roulette, betting daily upon whether two ancient, slender tunnels will get them to work on time or back home to their families in the evening. You've heard some of the things that we can see in the future without a new Gateway Tunnel. Whether it fails mechanically or unthinkably catastrophically, there would be a permanent loss of jobs for those who simply could no longer get to their positions in New York. There would have to be a relocation of those people who lose their jobs, who would have to find work elsewhere. And if companies in New York can't access a workforce from New Jersey, they too will have to consider relocation, dealing a potentially devastating blow to our residential and commercial real estate values. And the adverse spill-off effects would not end there. With no available trains, people will resort to cars and buses. Our gridlock condition on our highways would choke off our trucking industry, and the environmental impact would be catastrophic. But let's not forget, in all of this economic talk, the human toll involved. All of these nightmarish conditions would have an enormous and intolerable impact upon the stress levels of the citizens of our region. And yet all of these conditions are avoidable if we build this tunnel. But as you have heard today, as we stand here today, Gateway is being held a political hostage in Washington. But rest assured, we are moving ahead with the Portal North Bridge and with Gateway and with confidence. With the tireless leadership of the army of officials that we have, led by Governor Murphy, Senator Menendez, Senator Booker, as you've heard today from Congressman Pascrell, Ceres, and Payne, and others. We are locked and loaded in Washington, and we're ready to press the urgency of our case. And let me conclude by saying that over the past few years, we have heard a great deal about making America great again. And so I ask, what better place to embark upon that road to greatness than right here, right now, in doing the right thing, building America's largest infrastructure project, the Gateway Tunnel. Thank you very much.
A couple of questions before we break, please. Senator, do you want to jump in?
Yes, well, we're in the midst of doing appropriations work. We have passed a series of what we call minibuses, which are different segments of the federal government's budgeting. We're almost finished with it. We believe we will do well with Gateway under it. And I can't get into all of the legislative language that we have worked on because I don't want to flag it and risk it. But I think that we will succeed at continuing moving the project forward. The bottom line is, If we had cooperation, we would move forward faster, it would be cheaper, and the nation would be better served. But until we get that cooperation, we're going to keep the project alive and moving forward through the appropriations process.
You know, it's the entire realm of what we're discussing today. We've taken something that ought to be very simple, very straightforward, and made it really hard. And it's really frustrating as a result. Please. I'm not sure, I wasn't here 2 years ago, but I'll give you a couple of factors, and Diane could jump in if she disagrees with any of this. First of all, we had 3 cancellations this morning, which is down from what we've been seeing over the past month, and that's good except if it's your train. So if you're frustrated and upset about this, I can't blame you, so am I, and so are we. When we came in, so there's something called positive train control, which has been mandated by the federal government since 2011. It's a good, smart, technology-based system to basically keep us all, we run a safe system, but this is going to put in place a number of other fail-safes to make sure it can make it even safer. Very sensible program, mandated in 2011. You need to be in full compliance by December 31st, 2018 at midnight. When we came into office on January 16th, NJ Transit was 13% of the way toward that objective. As of 2 Fridays ago, we were at 60. Are we higher than 60, Diane? Yes. We're a little high. We're a little north of 60 now. So I want to give a big shout out to a heroic effort in just about 7+ months to get us from 13 to 60. But that comes at a cost. You have to pull these cars and trains offline to make the sort of technology investments per car and per train. And that means there are fewer cars and trains running. It is why we've had to shut a whole line down for several months on the Atlantic City line, not because we want to, but because we have no choice. We've been dealt a lousy hand, and it's incredibly frustrating. Separately, another bad hand we've been dealt is the amount of engineers that it takes to run the system every day is about 291. We used to have over 400, so you could factor in easily rights of any individual to call in and say, listen, I'm going to take today off, or factor in vacations or sickness, because you had a cushion of over 100 engineers. That pool has been allowed to dwindle over the past 8 years down to 330-something. So our degree of freedom, our degrees of freedom are extremely limited. You've seen a lot of action recently by Diane and Kevin Corbett, who runs it day to day, to, for instance, plead to waive the out-of-state prohibition, to try to aggressively find. It takes 20 months to train an engineer from scratch. What can we do to get them trained faster? If they've already been trained in another system, you could shrink that 20 months. So we're going to continue to have a challenging, my opinion, a challenging time at least through New Year's Eve. We will achieve the positive train control mandate because we have no choice. We will rebuild the bench of engineers. I think there's been a lot of observations that we could communicate better. We are aggressively pursuing a whole range of avenues to communicate the reality better. We've got the 495 overpass is down for shrinking lanes for construction. People have given us a lot of credit for communicating that in advance. We need to do the same thing with NJ Transit. I could go on, but I won't. Michael. Right there.
It's over a river.
I'm going to ask Senator Menendez to address your first question. Is there another agenda? But that certainly feels that way because this is so darn obvious. Listen, I think this, I said this earlier, this should be beyond politics. And the evidence for me is the universal, I believe in both New York and New Jersey, universal bipartisan support for this project. You can't find a Republican or a Democrat who are opposed to this. It's so obvious. We've got a president who grew up in Queens, whose interests, I would argue, in terms of his own business empire over the years are concentrated first and foremost in New York, Florida, and New Jersey, his personal life. This ought to be a no-brainer for him. Which is why I've retained my optimism. I believe at the end of the day, he and his team will get there because it is so obvious. It has such a big economic impact on this region, and this region is the most important economic region in our country. Senator, do you want to weigh into what else may be in players? Take a pass at that. Yeah, we'll take it. I'll speak for myself. There's got to be something else going on because it's so darn obvious. Anybody else? David? It's a good question. David asked the question, would you make any presidential candidate support for anybody a litmus test in terms of their support for infrastructure? It's for my taste, it's far too early to get into anything related to the national, the presidential politics. I think we're well served to just keep pounding away on how obvious this is. I can't imagine anybody, again, I have not seen any evidence other than the frustrations we've had in this administration on either side of the aisle who wouldn't say that this is so darn obvious. So I don't know that it needs to be a litmus test because it's so in plain sight, the economic impact that this would have. Please, maybe one more. Jerry, you want to comment on that? Yeah.
Well, the first project that we've green-lighted is the Portal North Bridge. So the first money would go there. We're also optimistic that if that were to take place, we think by definition the tunnel funding would ensue. That's not to say, by the way, that we don't continue to look at ways to value engineer this project, look to the private sector for potential sources of funds. But as Governor Murphy now months ago green-lighted the Portal North Bridge, and that's our first priority.
Just want to add one thing. We were pressed by the Department of Transportation in Washington to put more skin in the game, and I mentioned this in passing. We came up, I think, with a very creative solution, and the Port Authority was a big help here. The EDA put serious money on the table. The Port Authority gave us credit in our ledger at the Port Authority, and we put absolute skin in the game. And so not only is the economic impact of these projects so obvious, but we've done what we were asked to do. Maybe one more, I apologize. So the question is about the gas tax. This is one that's out of my hands, unfortunately. There's a lot you can control and some things in life you can't. And this is part of a formula. The treasurer decides this. The formula was put in place 2 years ago. It's like a lot of things we've inherited. It was not what it should have been. It completely overestimated fuel consumption. And so the treasurer had no choice but to raise the gas tax 4.3 cents a gallon. Very frustrating. I don't blame folks for being frustrated. The only silver lining is we know exactly where the money's going, and that's going into the Transportation Trust Fund. And Diane is up to her eyeballs with projects up and down the state, roads, bridges, rails, and tunnels. So unlike a lot of taxes that have come through the doors in New Jersey over the years where the money feels like it flies out the window, this is flying into infrastructure, and that's important. I want to thank Senator Menendez, the Congressman Pascrell, who I think had to leave, Sears and Payne, Jerry Zero on behalf of the trustees, all of the members of the business community. Rick, thank you for being here. Our brothers and sisters in organized labor and all the interested parties. Tom DeGeese, thank you for hosting us so graciously in Hudson County. Thank you all very much.